No more dudes in dresses. That's what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said to a room full of generals and admirals as he promised to de-woke the military. Plus, Trump RX, the president announces a new website where consumers can purchase prescriptions straight from the government. I'll tell you all about Fed beds. And a Florida teen leads cops on a wild goose chase after texting his parents that he was shot and kidnapped. There's just one problem. It wasn't true. Those stories and more today, Wednesday, October 1st. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. President Trump introduced a novel tactic to try and cut prescription drug prices. Buy from him. Well, technically from the federal government, but the website he announced Tuesday to enact this plan is called Trump RX. The president says his administration is cutting deals to make prescriptions cheaper when purchased directly from the government, as opposed to using insurance, if you have it, to buy those medications. The first big drug company to sign on is Pfizer.
Pfizer has agreed to provide some of their most popular current medications to all consumers at heavily discounted prices of anywhere between 50 and even 100%. And that's off the price. And in some cases, even more than that.
The president had previously committed to reducing drug prices by demanding that companies give the United States most favored nation status, which, if you can believe it, is actually a real thing. When drug makers calculate net consumer prices and compare them against other wealthy countries, the price is then negotiated with the U.S. market in mind. Now, some of the drug prices Pfizer agreed to reduce treat things like arthritis, migraines, dermatitis, and osteoporosis. Hamas still hasn't responded to President Trump's 20-point peace plan, and he doesn't like waiting. There's a lot at stake here. Israel has agreed to the plan in principle, but now Trump's patience is wearing thin. He says he's giving Hamas, quote, 3 or 4 days to agree to the plan, or else they will face, in his words, a very sad end. The president also noted that there's not much room here for negotiating the strategy. Qatari mediators say that Hamas is currently reviewing the deal and that it's just too early to expect a response. Now, the plan outlines an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages living and dead in Hamas's custody, and a staged withdrawal of the Israeli army from Gaza. It would also require Hamas to disarm and would create a transitional government in Gaza, overseen by an international body that's led by President Trump. A Florida teen disappeared last week, possibly abducted by 4 Hispanic men, prompting a huge search just north of Tampa. Scary stuff, right? Well, it would be if it were true. 17-year-old Caden Spate allegedly faked his own abduction for God only knows what reason, and authorities say he went so far as to shoot himself in the leg to sell the story. Here's how cops believe the whole thing went down. Caden fired off a frantic text to his family saying that he was shot and being kidnapped. His family was beside themselves. An Amber Alert went out. Caden was shot all right. The next day, he was spotted by locals and rescued with a gunshot wound to the leg. Police believe Caden's wound was self-inflicted after abandoning his car and fleeing on his bike. He'd allegedly even purchased a tent and camping supplies, presumably what he used during his night on the lam. What's wild, it's unclear whether he will face any charges, and according to the sheriff's office, his parents have so far refused to allow Caden to be interviewed for the investigation. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth held that meeting that I told you about last week, calling hundreds of military leaders from around the globe to Virginia for a very important mystery get-together. Well, mystery solved. The meeting took place and we finally know what it was about. Hegseth outlining his hopes for the future of our fighters, part of a 10-point directive. He demanded that all troops meet, quote, male-level physical standards, railed against fat troops, his words, not mine, and basically told anyone who wanted a more woke military to see themselves out the door.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that.
President Trump addressed the generals and admirals in attendance and outlined his global peace through strength strategy and a new focus here at home.
Last month, I signed an executive order to provide training for a quick reaction force that can help quell civil disturbances. And this is going to be a big thing for the people in this room because it's the enemy from within and we have to handle it before it gets out of control.
The president also basically demanded the Nobel Peace Prize, which will be announced next week. And despite having his eye on the prize, Trump predicted he wouldn't receive it and that it would be a, quote, big insult to our country. After the Tuesday meeting, I had the chance to speak with the Post's chief Washington correspondent, Stephen Nelson, for the details on the Secretary of War's new plan. Stephen, Secretary Hegseth has been promising these changes since he got the job. What's the rationale here? How does one even go about this across a military with more than 2 million people?
Well, that's a decent question, but one answer to that might be calling all of the middle management into a giant meeting and telling them what you would like. Secretary Hegseth, today, he addressed hundreds of generals and admirals. He gave them their marching orders, and presumably they will carry out his wishes. Now, President Trump, who is the commander-in-chief, of course, somewhat jokingly said as he left the White House to give his own speech at the event that if he didn't like any of the generals, he'd just fire them on the spot. So I think that the message was communicated, was presented by the administration as a lighthearted pep talk to the newly rebranded Department of War. But certainly there were some strident words and a desire for a new direction communicated today.
And strident words just has me wondering, what was the reaction from the military brass in the room to both Hegseth and the president?
Well, our Pentagon colleague, Caitlin Dornbos, was in the room. I was not, but I heard the live feed, and President Trump, he encouraged the generals to loosen up. Those were his exact words.
The military's famous for getting loose.
They did not follow that command. So as far as I could tell, you didn't hear applause. You could basically hear a pin drop on the live feed. So I think that they basically were pretty professional, and they didn't do a lot of reacting to President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's commands.
Now, while I have you here, I know you've also dug into the president's drug pricing announcement that I covered earlier in the pod. Now, he mentioned that Pfizer had signed on. Do we know the status of other drug companies? How broad can the public expect this effort to be?
Well, this was announced as a major breakthrough today. There's a new Trump RX website coming early next year that will feature various Pfizer drugs with the big markdown. The White House and President Trump said that there were going to be other drug companies joining. But, the practical impact of this right now is unclear because about 2/3 of Americans have private health insurance. And this new platform primarily would benefit people who do not have insurance. And that is, a significant number of people. But people with insurance right now, you may pay $20 as a copay for some drug that, technically cost its list price is $2,000 for a 30-month supply. So the people who would benefit the most are the people who are uninsured, it seems, from this website. But President Trump is he touted this as a big win for his efforts to equalize drug prices in the U.S. and other countries today. And it's part of a grander thing that also impacts Medicare and Medicaid as well. So definitely progress he announced with Pfizer, but how exactly this comes off, it does remain to be seen.
A wide range of topics in D.C. You have your finger on the pulse, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
AI might be taking over, but those bots, they still need us analog humans for now. The CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, spoke to Axios this week and warned that while President Trump is pushing to make the United States an AI powerhouse, there simply aren't enough good old human beings to build the infrastructure needed to accomplish that goal. Farley said the president is overlooking the, quote, essential economy, jobs like construction and maintenance staff or electricians. In other words, there aren't enough blue-collar workers being educated in those skilled trades. The Ford boss is trying to bring more attention to the shortfall of workers by hosting a summit in Detroit called Accelerate the Essential Economy. And the roster of guests includes leaders of U.S. Steel, AT&T, FedEx, U-Haul, and even the Labor Secretary, Lori Chavez DeRemer. And finally today, when you think school board, you don't usually think stripping. Well, a local women's rights activist in California protested a policy that allows transgender students to access girls' locker rooms by stripping down to her bikini at a school board meeting. Beth Bourne chairs Moms for Liberty, that's in Yolo County, and says she's the parent of a child in the Davis Unified School District outside of Sacramento.
Right now, we require our students to undress for PE class. So I'm just going to give you an idea what that looks like when I undress. Right now at this school district, we have children self-identifying into into different bathrooms just based off of their...
No, you cannot.
I have my bathing suit on.
After that moment, the school board's vice president called for a recess. They came back from break, allowed Bourne to continue her comments, and she did it again. That prompted a second recess before they returned a half hour later and took up a different topic. After the meeting, Bourne told a local television station that she's consistently tried to bring up the issue at meetings for the past 3 years and thought she needed to take drastic measures to make her point. Point certainly made. Now, before I leave your headphones today, I do have an update for you. Just hours after their separation went public, Nicole Kidman officially filed for divorce from Keith Urban. It's really over. The document cites the old irreconcilable differences as the reason, and the Oscar winner is also seeking to be the, quote, primary residential parent for the couple's 2 kids. Friends, we really got to a lot today, didn't we? A ton of news this week, and it is only Wednesday. I still can't get over the faking your own kidnapping story today. That one is gonna stick with me. So you also should stick with me and like and follow the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. See you tomorrow.